All right, let's dive into this. Today, we're uh, really dissecting something pretty vital for Malaysia's economic future.
Hmm.
That's the upcoming sales and service tax, the SST, and what it might mean for their aerospace industry.
Which is a pretty big industry for them, right?
Exactly. I mean, imagine pulling in RM 25.1 billion last year.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that is maintaining, repairing aircraft MRO work. Big stuff.
Yeah, high-value jobs, global connections.
Totally. So our mission today really is to unpack how this tax adjustment, which might seem small, could maybe impact this whole sector.
And what they can learn from others, maybe.
Exactly. How do they keep those aerospace dreams, flying high?
Well, it's interesting when you look at the potential scale here. Malaysia is looking at expanding the SST scope starting July 2025
Okay.
and bumping the service tax up to 8%. And crucially, this isn't just about local business.
Right.
Their aerospace sector, especially MRO, it's very export-oriented, most clients. International airlines.
Ah, okay. So that makes them vulnerable.
Highly vulnerable to local taxes, yeah. Because those global customers, they can just, well, pick up and go somewhere else if Malaysia gets too pricey because of a tax.
That phrase you used, erosion of cost advantages. That sounds serious. Can we, put a number on that? What's the hit we're talking about?
We can try. The projected SST burden, it could be somewhere around RM2 to RM2.6 billion. That's by 2025 if these exemptions aren't locked in.
2 to 2.6 billion. Wow.
Yeah, and get this, that's roughly 8% of the entire industry's annual turnover.
8%.
Okay.
That's not small change. That's a direct hit.
It really is. It makes Malaysia look, well, less competitive on the world stage.
Okay, so that's a huge potential problem.
Yeah.
Faced with something like this, how do other big aerospace players handle it? What are the global best practices?
It's actually a pretty common approach, you see. Take Singapore, for instance. Their GST is 8%, similar ballpark to Malaysia's planned SST.
Right.
But here's the strategic part. Singapore applies a zero-rated policy. That means 0% GST on aerospace services and parts.
0%.
Yeah.
Why?
They basically treat them as exports of service. It's a deliberate move to keep their MRO hub competitive. Stops international customers getting hit with extra tax.
Ah, I see. So it's about keeping the business there, essentially.
Precisely. Otherwise, those customers might just, fly their planes elsewhere for maintenance.
And it's not just Singapore, right? The UK, the EU, they do something similar.
Exactly the same principle. Their VAT rates are often higher, maybe around 20%. But again, they use zero-rated exemptions for aircraft maintenance, specifically for planes flying international routes.
So it takes the tax out of the equation for those big airline contracts.
That's the idea. It basically signals, we want this high-value work done here, stops airlines shopping around just to dodge taxes.
So the flip side then, what happens if a country doesn't do this? You mentioned India had a bit of a cautionary tale.
Oh, definitely. It really highlights the risk. India initially had quite a high GST, 18% on MRO.
18%, that's steep.
It was. And it made their own MRO industry pretty uncompetitive. So much so that Indian airlines were actually outsourcing their heavy maintenance.
Where were they going?
To places like Malaysia, Singapore, basically anywhere cheaper because of that tax difference.
But they changed course.
They did. They realized it was hurting them. So in 2020, India slashed that GST on MRO way down to 5%.
Big drop.
Huge. And it worked. It boosted their competitiveness, started attracting foreign investment back into their local MRO sector. Shows how powerful tax policy is here.
Okay, that's a clear lesson. So bring it back to Malaysia. What's the path forward for them, given these examples?
Well, the big takeaway, the common theme globally, is that these export-focused aerospace activities, they're usually shielded from consumption taxes like SST or VAT.
Because taxing them just pushes business away.
Exactly. You risk your own airlines, let alone international ones, going elsewhere for maintenance. It undercuts the whole domestic industry.
It sounds like Malaysia's Ministry of Finance has been listening, though. They've put something in place.
Yes, they have. There's this service tax policy, number 62024, and it temporarily exempts MRO services from that 8% service tax.
Okay, that aligns with what Singapore and the EU are doing.
It does. For now, the exemption runs until the end of 2027.
Ah, so it's temporary. That's the catch.
That's the key challenge, yeah. It's time-bound. If they don't make it permanent, Malaysia could lose any competitive ground they've gained.
But what about the government's revenue? That RM2 2.6 billion figure sounds like something they wouldn't want to lose easily.
It sounds like a lot, and it is, but you have to put it in context. It's estimated to be only around 4% of Malaysia's total projected SST collection. which is expected to be over RM 50 billion.
Only 4%. Okay, so maybe there's room to maneuver.
Definitely seems like it. There are other ways to potentially cover that gap without hurting a key growth industry.
Such as, what are the alternatives?
Well, for one, they could look at reallocating savings from other areas, like the fuel subsidy reforms. The diesel subsidy changes apparently saved around RM 4 billion a year.
Okay, that's significant.
Or, expand the tax base in other ways, maybe a luxury goods tax, or even a really small bump in airport charges for international flights.
Like a few ringgits per ticket.
Maybe RM 5, RM 10 per passenger service charge or departure levy. Something small that hits end consumers or discretionary spending, not the core MRO business that competes globally.
Or maybe, if the industry grows because of the exemption, couldn't the government recoup some revenue through higher corporate taxes from those expanding businesses?
That's the dynamic offset idea, exactly. More business, more profits, more jobs. That all leads to more tax revenue eventually. It's about taxing smart, not just hard.
Right, prioritizing that high-value growth.
Yeah, looking at the bigger economic picture, not just the immediate line item on the budget.
So, wrapping this up,
Huh.
what does this really mean for you listening and for Malaysia's spot in the global aerospace race? It feels like a big strategic choice.
It really is. Foregoing this specific tax isn't really a cost. It's more like an investment, isn't it?
An investment in what, specifically?
In a high-tech, high-growth future. It helps secure Malaysia's ambition to be a major regional aerospace hub. That means attracting investment, creating skilled jobs, long-term benefits.
That makes a lot of sense. Trading a relatively small short-term tax gain for potentially much larger long-term prosperity.
Precisely.
It really makes you think, if this tax smart, not hard idea works for aerospace, where else could applying that kind of thinking unlock potential? Not just in Malaysia, but anywhere looking to build strong, future-proof industries. Something to definitely mull over.